In this final video on climate change mitigation in buildings, we are going to discuss the role of energy policies. In the previous videos, we have seen that buildings have become more energy efficient over time, meaning that less energy is needed to produce the same output, and there is a shift towards the application of renewable CO2-free energy sources. In this video, I will discuss the role of energy policies in achieving carbon-free buildings. The term policy can be used in a variety of meanings. In this video, the focus is on government policies, meaning all initiatives that governments take to reach a certain societal goal. But first, why do we need policies? Governments want to achieve specific targets, such as carbon-free buildings, and consider the energy efficiency and utilization of renewable energy sources as important options to reach these targets. Although investments in energy efficiency measures and the use of renewables are often profitable, actors, companies, institutes or individuals do not adopt these options because they are facing barriers. Governments implement policies with the objective to influence behavior of actors and to overcome these barriers to achieve their targets. Let's look a bit deeper into different types of barriers that actors are faced with. First, the knowledge barriers. Companies, institutes and individuals may not be informed well enough about new possibilities to become more energy efficient. On the other hand, they may be aware but don't know it is applicable for them, or they don't trust the product. The second group of barriers are the economic barriers. This has to do with the fact that a product or a technology is not attractive from an economic perspective. Benefits don't outweigh the costs. Also, when benefits do exceed the cost, the payback time may be too long. Or companies and households lack financial resources to make the upfront investments. A third group are the organizational barriers. This refers to often complex decision-making process in large companies and institutions. This also refers to the fact that often nobody within a company or institution feels responsible for the topic. Next barriers that can be faced are the split incentives. This refers to the fact that actors carrying out an investment in CO2 reduction measures are not the ones profiting financially. For example, the owner of an office building invests in insulation measures, but the tenant is the one profiting from the measures with a lower energy bill. Finally, we have the concept of bounded rationality. This refers to the fact that every decision maker has his or her limitations in terms of time and resources. This results in a situation that for many actors, such as office building owners, for which the costs of energy are low compared to other costs, energy efficiency improvements are not even taken into consideration, or are at least low on their priority list. Next, let's investigate the policies that are implemented to overcome these barriers and the basic mechanisms they use to influence the behavior of actors. First, the communication mechanisms, aimed at transferring information and providing knowledge. The basic idea behind this mechanism is that people will change their behavior if they are better informed. Examples of policy instruments making use of this mechanism are energy efficiency labels, like the ones we have seen earlier being used for appliances, and all types of media campaigns, either aimed at a broad public or targeting specific actors. Next, we have the economic mechanism, aimed at providing financial incentives to stimulate desired behavior with actors, or introduce financial penalties to discourage undesired behavior. The basic idea behind this mechanism is that people will optimize their welfare. Policies making use of these mechanisms are, for example, energy and carbon taxes and investment subsidies. Finally, normative mechanisms, aimed at setting standards for what people are obliged to do or forbidding certain behavior. The basic idea is that people are willing to act based on jointly accepted ideas about what behavior is appropriate in certain situations. Examples of policies making use of these mechanisms are energy efficiency standards and negotiated agreements. What you need to remember is that usually a mix of policy instruments, a so-called policy package, is needed to overcome the different barriers, and the policy mix evolves over time, often starting with softer instruments to overcome knowledge and economic barriers, moving to more stringent instruments like obligatory standards. A short note on the government perspective of policies. As they implement policies, they want to evaluate implemented policies and know if these policies are effective. In other words, to what extent do the policy instruments contribute to achieving the targets? To which extent do policy instruments make a difference compared to the situation without instruments in place? Because efficiency improvements can also be the result of other developments, like regular replacement of old equipment with new ones, other policies, or external developments. Besides, governments want to know what the efficiency is of implemented policies, what is the cost effectiveness of policies, and can targets be reached against lower costs. Key when evaluating the impact of policies is determining the baseline. I will illustrate that with this graph, with on the horizontal axis the time and on the vertical axis energy savings. This red line represents the energy savings in the baseline situation. This means that these are the savings that would have been achieved also in the absence of policies, resulting from the fact that, for example, production equipment has reached the end of its lifetime and is replaced by more efficient equipment. These savings are often referred to as autonomous savings. Next, policies are introduced, resulting in energy savings represented by this green line. The difference in savings between the green and red line can be attributed to the policy instruments. What you need to keep in mind is that in evaluations often no corrections are being made for autonomous changes, implying that impact of policy instruments is often overrated. The impact of single policy instruments can be very difficult to determine, as they are often different factors contributing to energy savings. Finally, actual impacts are usually rather small and often difficult to measure. Now let's investigate the most common policy instruments currently implemented by governments to stimulate the uptake of measures to make buildings climate neutral. In new buildings, building codes prescribing maximum amount of energy that a new building is allowed to use, or setting minimum technical requirements for specific building elements, is the most applied policy instrument. To stimulate building renovation of existing buildings, financial instruments like subsidies and taxes are the most applied instruments. And as we already saw earlier this week, energy efficiency improvements with appliances have been simulated by combining energy efficiency standards and labeling. Likewise, energy efficiency improvements with lighting are incentivized by energy efficiency standards and labeling schemes. Finally, for small electrical equipment, there are, for example, standards in place on energy consumption in standby mode. This is the end of the second week on designing climate-neutral buildings. I hope you enjoyed these 2 weeks and gained new insights on the potential to make buildings more climate-friendly.